All right, boys, we are live. Episode number 22 of the Deconstruction Podcast, brought to you by Jobtable, the simplest way to grow and manage your construction business. How are we doing?
What's going on? How you guys doing?
Johnny,
Doing
long
great.
time no see.
I know we missed last week. A couple of us were traveling, but we're back at it today. And quick announcement before we get started. So for those who may be on the fence on Jobtable or considering softwares, Jobtable has always been known as a low-cost provider, very affordable. We charge $49 per month. We are in the process of changing our pricing structure slightly. So in the next few weeks, we are increasing our prices. It's going to be $59 per month. That's going to give you 3 users and $10 extra per additional user. So nothing drastic. We're still going to be super affordable to anyone, any size company. But with that being said, if you sign up before that pricing change happens in the next few weeks, you'll be grandfathered in that $49 per month for unlimited users. If you were on the fence, now might be a good time to check it out. So, all right, where to start today? We got a few topics I wanted to cover. First, so there's been a lot going on in the news, right? From tariff wars, US to Canada, Canada back to the US. Now you're in China imposing tariffs on Canada and vice versa. We got a new prime minister in Canada, Mark Carney. There's growing concern of a recession in the US, and in Canada for that matter, which would obviously impact countries all over the world. So just a lot going on. It feels like months worth of action and news since we last got on a podcast. So with that being said, Johnny, I want to bring it to you. Forget the news, forget the noise in the background, everything I just said. Like, what are you experiencing firsthand on the ground in your business right now? Like, what are some of the conversations that you're having with clients, colleagues in the industry? Like, what's actually going on the ground from your perspective?
Well, since we last spoke, obviously, we said that there would be rising costs everywhere, but now you're actually starting to see it. So in the last, I want to say 30 calendar days, we've seen, precious metals like copper, stainless, everything go up, even plastic, to be honest with you. A lot of our suppliers now, every time that they're sending us quotes, they now have a bunch of stipulations on there where, typically, and the same with us, right? So we have to transfer that down. When we're sending a quote, typically our quotes are always good for 30 days. Where now it almost feels like COVID all over again, where, our stipulations are only like, this quote is good for, depending on how much precious metals are in there, 7 to 10 days. And then we also have a line that says, everything is subject to the trade tariffs, because that's what's happening from the quotes that are being sent from our suppliers and wholesalers right to us. So, it doesn't look good. I think that this trade war, it sucks for all parties. I don't know what the end goal is, but we talk about relationships all the time. And I truly feel in order for everybody to thrive, whether it's Canada, US, Mexico, trading is essential, right? And when we start charging people, a premium to sell their product here and vice versa, it's going to slow everything down, right? Until, I truly don't know what the end goal is. I don't know if the smart play is to start, producing everything in-house. But even that here in Canada, right? Like we have our own issue where we have like interprovincial like taxes, right? Which it's like so stupid. So yeah, like we're seeing it on the quotes and it literally mimics what happened during COVID. It kind of feels like the Wild West where you don't know what tomorrow holds. And like I've said many times before, the only thing that sucks is it just goes down to the end consumer. But with it going down to the end consumer, there's also a big battle between us, the subcontractor, to the GC, and then to the client and to the consultants, right? Where a lot of times, and I get it, a lot of people trying to think that people are trying to make, an extra quick buck here and there. But reality is no, if you're pricing a job, you got 10% on materials. They took 30 days to make a decision whether they're going to do the project or not. And in that 30 days, the material, went up. Like I said, copper alone went up like 20 something percent in 28 days, right? So if you got 10% on material and it goes up 28%, that price does not stand, right? You can't do it. So I'm seeing that, and I'm also seeing a lot of like the housing sector. Like I knew it was slowing down, but now you see it a lot in the residential sector that stuff is like coming to a screeching halt. And it kind of like piggybacks on, training the framers and stuff like that. The economy needs to kickstart, right? It needs to kickstart. And now this trade war, I think is also, not helping it at all, right? So I truly hope we come to some type of resolution here, because I think for all economies, involved in this trade war, it's not good, man. It's not good.
What about on the GC side? Are you seeing a lot of from conversations with clients, GCs, like are they kind of hesitant now, delaying projects? Like, are you seeing anything like that?
Yeah, a lot of delays on projects, and I think in the next month or two, there's renewal on a lot of these union contracts, which again, that's going to be a whole other issue on its own, because people literally, they don't know what to do, right? People are shelving projects because there's so much uncertainty, right? Uncertainty, especially what we were dealing with before. There was already a lot of uncertainty, inflation, and all that. Markets, not doing well. But now with this trade war, the uncertainty, just a lot of people, especially a lot of investment companies, even banks and everything like that, everybody's tightening up even more, right? So uncertainty, we all know uncertainty, makes a lot of people with money that want to invest stop, right? And really try to understand the situation, right? I know the stock market's down, but what they say, when it's down, you buy more, you kind of double down on your investment. So that when it picks back up, it gets better. But when it comes to construction, unfortunately, it's not like the stock market. You don't know where this is going to go. I do have faith, though. I don't want to be like dark and gloom here. I do have faith that we will come to a resolution, and get this kick-started. But again, I'll speak more for Canada. I think we're in a lot of issues right now. We have an interim prime minister that was not elected. A lot of people don't want him. We need to call for an election, which it seems like it's going to go the full way. We're only going to probably be voting in October. So you have some intern guy trying to, talk peace with Trump. There's a lot of uncertainty. And I think I heard somebody say, and I think this is the best way to kind of put it, where it's like, there's this saying, the shit hits the fan. I believe it was Manny from the Construction Life podcast. He said it like really well. He basically said like shit hits the fan, but the problem is the fan hasn't even started yet, right? And that's where, if we don't come to a resolution soon, things can get pretty ugly, right? Union contracts coming up, people threatening to strike, which means, again, if things are slowed down and now these guys go on strike, there's no money to be invested in the industry. So
But let's say things don't get worked out, right? That's the way I kind of like to look at it. And like Johnny said, like as a contractor, what can you do to protect yourself? That's the first thing that comes to mind, right? So Johnny, you mentioned, the verbiage in your quotations, right? At the very least, talk about
very
precious
important
metals in there. Yeah, if prices fluctuate, if anything happens, this quotation is null and void, right? Step one. Step two is don't put all your eggs in one basket. The amount of contractors that me and Johnny work with and for, is substantial. And reason being is not, because we're some kind of whores that just, we want to work for everybody. It's actually very strategic because we work for a lot of different general contractors that do a lot of different kind of work. So whether it be mid-rise, whether it's a service contract, whether it's residential, whether it's commercial, industrial, working in schools, colleges, universities, these projects vary. And the reason we do that is because if one sector slows down, generally another one will remain stable and sometimes will even pick up. And it's very important. And I know there's a lot of companies, especially in Toronto, that they like to be very specific in the type of work that they do. For example, like plumbing companies, they only want to do industrial work. So they're going to do grocery stores or car dealerships, and that's all they stick to. But guess what? When all these hikes start affecting us, and then like Johnny mentioned, we have to pass them down to the consumer, to the customer, and they just all of a sudden decide that, hey, I'm not going to build this right now because it's not worthwhile for me, or the money that they were expecting from the bank is no longer coming their way, they're just going to shut these projects down. So now you're left with a company with a bunch of employees and no work coming in, right? So I know it may not be ideal for you to kind of step out of your comfort zone and say, look, I'm going to open up a service department, but we can talk about this till we're blue in the face. The service industry is really recession proof, right? And again, like I just said, it doesn't have to be service, but just kind of putting eggs in multiple baskets with multiple general contractors so that when the shit does hit the fan and that fan turns on, you have something to fall back on and you have a plan for it, right? Rather than relying on the interim prime minister to settle things with Donald Trump, right? Or, we hope for an election that, is going to come soon, but then you're just hoping for another politician crook to come in and save the day. You can't rely on these guys.
No, you can't.
Right?
You can't.
You have to make your own path.
Yeah, and I think one other way you can really, like you always say, Charlie, another way that you can really control, like what you can control, is right now is not a time, I would say, to take credit, right? Don't take credit. Own your trucks out. If you need a truck and you wanted to buy that new truck, do you really need that new truck? Like, do you have enough money to just, buy a used one, pay it out? I think the name of the game right now is keep your receivables very tight. Make sure you're getting paid and on time. Don't give anybody any leeway, and don't be going out and making drastic purchases. Like I have somebody I know that in the last 2 months went out, bought or leased, I want to say, or financed a few trucks, trailers. And 2 months later, he's kicking himself in the ass, right? I think right now is a time to try to stay out of debt as much as possible. Now, I understand to run a company, you need to reinvest, and you need certain things to obviously run more efficiently. I totally agree on that. But just be very mindful on your purchases and just understand what is helping you, what is actually pushing something forward. You're spending, again, it's like we talk about with Jobtable, right? If you're spending $50 a month, but that $50 a month is saving you, 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours, 100%, that makes sense, right? But now if you're going to go out and get, $100,000 worth of vehicles and pay a 10, 12% on that, does that make sense, right? Can you make do with something else? Just be very mindful on your purchases right now, right? Like, especially at a time of uncertainty, because you might be busy right now. Some people might be listening to us, and, I know we're all victim of it, where we've listened to some guys talk and it's like, I don't know what this guy's seeing, but I don't see it like that. But trust me, man, when it hits you, then you're going to be like, fuck, what they were saying is true, right? Like, I remember talking to people the beginning of 2024, and I said, I see something bad coming down, and everybody's like, it's booming. And now, a lot of people are singing the same tune, and it's like, fuck, I told you guys over a year ago, right?
And I see as many people that suffer through there's a ton that are going to suffer through the recession that might even lose their businesses. But as many people suffer, there's also an abundance of people that thrive, right? And those are the people that have positioned themselves well and, like I said, created their own path. And rather than worrying about the next politician or negotiations from Doug Ford, right, that are just an absolute joke, they don't even pay attention to this stuff. Right, they position themselves well, and they create their own path. They contact the right people, they get the right work, and they keep busy, and they focus on the task at hand, which is the most important thing. And I mean, how can you rely anyways on Doug Ford? It's just this. I don't know if you guys have been watching, these empty threats that he makes and retracts. It's an absolute joke, and you're not doing yourself any favors by relying on these people.
Yeah, and I would say just last thing to throw in, as a company that's constantly wanting to grow and evolve, sometimes in times like this, it's not about the growth, it's about maybe how you reposition, right? I think that's the right way to put it. Sometimes it's not just about moving forward, it's about repositioning to make sure that whatever position, whatever growth you've had to this point, now maybe it might be a good time to like you say, Costa, right? Like look at your finances, and just cut out what you don't need and keep what's essential, and just try to, if you have a 10,000 a month overhead, is there any way to keep everything you have but reposition in a way where, from 10,000 you bring it down to 8,000 or 7,000, right? And then this way, when the economy kick starts again, you can get right back to your growth, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of points I can add here, just listening to you guys, John, what you just said earlier, it feels like another COVID. And, if that's the case, like businesses go through these cycles, and now is like a wartime in business. Like now is the time you got to survive. Like that's what it's all about. You got to get your house in order. You got to be very mindful with what you're doing, what you're spending. Be very mindful of every single dollar coming in, coming out, audit your expenses, cut where you can. And so, yeah, I feel like I'm not sensing that level of urgency as much as I feel I probably should. Would you agree? Like, do you think there's that urgency? Like, or
Look, I'll speak for myself, and I think, with Charlie as well. We're like doomsday preppers, right? I know it sounds, funny to say, but I'd rather be ready for the worst case scenario. And if it's only 50% of that, that means like I was very prepared, right? I just hate being caught with my pants down. I've been telling people for the last year, we've spoken a lot about it on our podcast as well, where it's like, reposition yourself. Don't think that this is, 2022, 2021, where work was just like booming. You might be busy right now, but you don't know what 6 months down the line holds. So don't be naive. And yeah,
no, I think we're all naturally like that. I'm just saying I'm speaking to a lot of contractors every day. I personally am not sensing that the level of urgency as like you're describing.
yeah, and I think
Would
you're
you
not
agree?
feeling. I think you're not feeling that because a lot of people, like you're coming out of a
Busy. A lot of
boom.
guys are still busy.
Yeah, you're coming out of a boom, right? So when you're coming out of a boom, like I get it. People want to be optimistic and they want to, they don't want to focus on the negative. It's just it's
So what I'm getting at really is, do you think a lot of these companies are going to be caught with their pants down because they're not like foreseeing what's actually happening?
look. I don't know
Some
if
some of them will, some of them will, some of them won't. Me, like we have a lot of contractor friends that are struggling right now. There's a ton of them. We speak to them every day. So, if you spoke to these guys, Casa, you would really get a sense of the urgency with these guys. But again, that's because they didn't doomsday prep. Like Johnny said, it's such a great way, the great way to say it, John, is that, prepare for the worst. Expect the worst. And if it doesn't happen, it doesn't harm you. If anything, you run a leaner company, a tighter ship, and it only helps you in the end, right? But some of these guys, they got fat, right? They had lots of work. They were busy. They took everything they had for granted. They got nice and thick. And all of a sudden now, the carpet got swept from under their feet and they're looking around for work and they can't buy a job, right? But it's with that being said, I think it's a mix. I think you're gonna have a lot of contractors that are, like Johnny said, there was a boom. They're coming down from this high, and they're still somewhat busy, and slowly it's gonna fade away, and they're gonna get a big reality check, right? But then there's the other guys that are more of the mind that they have a good system in place. They don't have their eggs all in one basket, and they've never taken it for granted. And they said, you know what, I can see this coming down the pipeline, but I'm prepared for it. Right? So again, like, you can literally be recession proof. If you play your cards right, and you do this the right way, you can smile. You won't even feel the recession other than reading about it in the papers, right? Or watching it on the news, right? Other than that, you won't feel it at all.
Look, for the people listening, and for the people that, don't see it, I'll just give you two examples that are, very relevant and very recent. So, talking to our guy at the bank, one of the big companies here, in the last month, he was just telling me the story. They have almost a $25 million line of credit, and the bank just cut them down to $2 million. Okay, banks don't do that, right? Unless there's an issue. And again, I'm not going to name the company. A very, very well-known company, very big company. So for a very big company, number one, to get a $25 million line of credit for a business, very hard, right? You gotta have a lot of revenue. You gotta, stay on top of everything. You gotta keep showing a profit. So to go from 25 million down to 2 million, that was in the last 30 days. Now, so that's example number one, right? Example number two is, like, we're hiring right now in our plumbing company. This is the first time I've ever seen 60% of our applicants are union, right? Mm. So, those are two indicators just to me where it's like, well, what's going on here, right? This is like, I've never seen this, right? On those two occasions. Now, not to say that, big companies don't go under. It's happened many times. But like this one company, they're a contractor, one of the biggest, around. And, for them to go from 25 million as a line of credit down to 2 million, if people understand the way the bank works, right, that basically means that company's revenue has dropped 90+%, right? And the only reason a company like that would drop in revenue that drastically is because the work's not there, right? Not to say that they're not capable of doing the work. It's just, 1 year or month by month, they keep cutting, gets back to the bank. They just went through, because because of year end, you're going to have to, a lot of these companies are bonded, so they got to send their financials to the bank. And for the bank to make a call like that, right? And even the guy, like our guy at the bank was saying, he goes, we don't cut people's lines like this, right? This is just, he was trying to like shed light to us, like where it's like, guys, just stay on top of your financials and make sure you guys are running a tight ship. And if you see a decrease, you got to shift with it, right? Don't be, too optimistic that it's just going to self-correct, right? I think we have a lot of this, this mentality that, we're invincible here in the West, where the reality is we're not, right? I just think that a lot of the companies that are out right now, and yes, companies have been through recessions before, but talking to the guys who have been around a long time, they're the ones that are saying, like, I've been through, the 80s, the 90s, the 2000 like recessions, and the only thing I can say is, they say it the best too, is you got to run lean, you got to make sure you're somewhat debt free, and those are the people that are going to make it through, right?
Yeah, very well said. Very last point here before we move on. Like you guys are saying, we're all saying now's the time to tighten the ship, but more importantly, get educated, like actually understand what's going on. We put out this very quick guide on, it's called 25% tariffs on construction, what they mean and how to stay ahead. You know, because let's face it, a lot of, especially newer companies, you hear the word tariffs, like you really might not even understand like what they mean, what the implications are, what industries they affect, like what you can actually do to stay ahead of them. So that's what this guide is. I'm going to put it in the notes here. Whoever wants it, it's a free download. But yeah, now's the time to just, at the very minimum, just get educated on what's actually happening in the economy.
100%.
Right. So moving on, next topic here, actually kind of related. Let me cue it up here. I thought this was an interesting one and could probably get some good discussion. So this was from the Bay Observer. It's called "Supplier to Home Construction Industry Warns of Catastrophic Level of Unemployment in Housing Business." John, you just actually touched on this, how you're seeing a big slowdown. I'll quickly read some of it here. So the head of Hamilton's major homegrown building supply company is sounding a serious note of warning about the dire state of the new housing industry in the area. Peter Turkstra, the third generation owner of more than 70-year-old Turkstra Lumber Company, says high development charges are making up too large a portion of the cost of housing, and that, coupled with the recent tariff threats from the Trump government, have placed the house construction business in a precarious position. In an open letter to the mayors of Hamilton, Burlington, and most municipalities in the immediate region, Turkstra stated, "This emergency request is to support our industry and to all employees involved in construction, whether directly or downstream. If you don't respond, we expect a catastrophic level of unemployment in construction and an immediate impact on all those supplying the construction industry. To be specific, we are asking you to consider cutting the price of development charges and all forms of construction permitting fees. At the provincial and federal levels, support with any other measures will be crucial to the survival of construction in Ontario." So actually, and lastly here, very interesting chart right here. So this chart basically shows the development charges from municipalities, specifically this one in this article. And this is, I was looking at this is pretty consistent with Toronto and like most municipalities. But look at the amount of development charges on housing since 2014, like how much they've shot up.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this is an interesting article. Johnny kind of touches on what you were just describing, you know, how you're seeing this actually play out on the residential side as well. So when you hear this, like this big supplier in the area sounding this alarm, writing this letter to mayors, and you know, seems very urgent. Like, what's your perspective on that?
I don't think it's just you know, the cost of lumber and all that, and the tariff threats. We've seen this decline in residential sales in the condo market already, right? The amount of people that stopped buying condos for, you know, $500,000-$600,000 with a 5% interest rate, it's a no-brainer. Nobody can afford it anymore. The amount of people coming into this country is insane, and all they're doing is building these 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom condos. There's no dwellings for families. It's unaffordable. So for the last few years, you've already seen the condo market just kind of crumble, which is another reason why we've had a lot of union guys apply for non-union companies, just because the majority of them are sitting at home or with no work. Now it's trickled down to the housing, because these developers, they're terrified to build, right? Now, not only because of, you know, the cost to build and the interest rates and the mortgage rates, but now because of the tariff threats. So it's directly related to what we were just talking about, and something definitely needs to change, because we do have a housing problem here. We have a shortage, and if no one's willing to build, we're going to be in a very tight spot, right?
Yeah, and I'll just add to that, and this is just my personal opinion. Again, I'm I might be talking out of my ass here, and at least I can admit it. It's just my personal opinion is there's just too much government interference, right? I don't know how to say it lightly. It's just every time, somebody's buying a property, they're investing money, they're taking a risk, they're selling it, they've made some money, they go to flip onto another one. What happens? Government comes out with a new law. This happens, you gotta pay this tax. So now it becomes like, well, it's not worth it to build, right? Or to renovate and sell and flip a home or develop, a piece of property or whatever it is, right? We had family friends that they own quite a bit of property, and 2014, 2015, 2016, they were rocking, right? And, as the years went on, it was, new tax, new this, new legislation, new fucking form of, permits and all of that. And it just became unsustainable. Then you have, another one of my cousins, he's a relocation agent for, MLSE. We had that foreign tax. So somebody came here to play for one of the big teams here in the city. Guy went out looking at properties, looked at a property. I think it was like 3.9 million. He was ready to buy it on the spot. Then, it's like, oh, do you have dual citizenship? It's like, no. It's like, oh, well then, buying this piece of property is not 3.5 million. There's a 25% tax or whatever it was on top of it. It went from 3.9 to 5.1. Guy's like, I'm not fucking paying it. That's ridiculous. So I just feel like there's always a fucking interference when the government doesn't want to step in and do something to help the people, and people are finding a way to make money and do this and do that. Then they come and step in, and then they kind of like kibosh the whole idea, right? That's what entrepreneurs are. They're always trying to find a way to make money. But also too, what does that do? That brings, more renovations, more building, more this, more that. But then the government comes in and just starts slapping, to me, just unnecessary rules and regulations, and people just get fed up, right? And we can see it, right? We've talked about this so many times. You got record amount of Canadians moving out of the country because everything you're doing, it's like, what the fuck, man? I turn left, you put a roadblock. Okay, as Canadians and many North Americans in general, it's like, all right, well, what are you going to do? You can't do this now all of a sudden. So it's like, all right, I'll turn around. I'll just go right. I'll go and do this, right? The second you start to make a little bit of money, boom, they notice it. They put some other type of regulatory, stupid fucking, thing in the way. And then everybody turns around and everybody's looking like, what the fuck is going on, right? Like, you can't even make money. It's not even worth it anymore, right? People are buying condos. People were buying condos, 1-bedroom condos, because obviously, the economy was booming, printing of money from the government, inflation comes at an all-time high, rates start to soar, people are losing money. Like, it just gets to a point where it's like, man, there's a lot that has to be fixed. And again, like, getting back to what Charlie always says, like, don't worry about everybody else, control what you can control. But at one point in time too, when you're putting a force field around people, you know what I mean, and then you're trying to blame so many other avenues, it's like, I truly, like, get out of the way, like,
Yeah.
honestly.
Your thoughts, John, are very similar to my take and what I was thinking with this article. So first of all, I think these alarm bells, as per this article, should have been ringing at least 10 years ago at the minimum. So what I mean by that is, I just pulled this up here. So look at this, how crazy this is. So in Toronto, development charges for single detached homes have seen a substantial increase, rising from 12,000 in 2010 to 141,000 in 2024. 993% hike. So what does that mean? Development charges alone represent up to 25% of the cost of a home. So like, so I think, as you're saying, John, like I think business leaders in communities, voters, entrepreneurs, home buyers, those in real estate, especially, like all those people who these development charges have been directly impacting, have been too silent for too long, right? Like, there's no way that we, as the people, the voters, the taxpayers, should have ever allowed this amount of government red tape and like interference, as you were saying, quite possibly even corruption in markets, especially one so important as construction. So, as much as I respect this, Peter Turkstra here in this article speaking out, writing this open letter to the mayors, I think this should have been happening a lot sooner, right? We've allowed government to come way too far into almost every single aspect of our lives. And it's unfortunate now that with these tariffs and the real impact they're actually imposing on businesses and people everywhere, it takes something like this for business leaders to start ringing the alarm. And one last point I'll make here is this is the exact reason why you're seeing so much capital and people leaving Canada. Like, there comes a point where entrepreneurs and businesses have to make a decision whether it makes any sense at all to continue investing and growing a business in Canada, because the incentives, they're simply not there anymore. So,
well, look at, sorry to interrupt, but look at our interim prime minister, okay? He moved his own business from Canada to the US. You know what I mean? Like,
that's what I mean. Yeah, unless something like drastic happens and we start seeing just more competent leaders and people in government, which I'm not very hopeful in, like I think we're just going to continue seeing a significant outflow of skill and capital out of Canada, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, and just to touch base, you're right. Like I at least, like, to Peter from the article, like I'm glad he wrote the letter. Like, at least it's somebody that took an initiative to do it. Now, yes, I think that this bell should have been rang much sooner. But again, I'm sitting here saying it, but it's not like I wrote a letter. So, I can say, we're all part of the problem as well.
For sure.
Yeah. But and I tip my cap to him for sending out that letter and ringing the alarm. But it gets to a point where it's like, look, guys, there's so many issues at hand of why we are in this position today. And I just feel that, like, look at that statistic, 993% hike in development charges. I can't tell you how many projects we do. Stuff comes in, especially here in Ontario, we have a pretty strict code here on building, which is good. But at the same time, you get a lot of nonsense thrown in where you're putting up a building, all of a sudden it's like, well, you need a rain harvesting system, right? And it's like, okay, you got to collect the rainwater and you got to reuse it to the people's toilets and things in their unit. And it's like, okay, but rainwater, like, I get it. It's a green perspective, which is good in a sense. But at the same time, it's like, okay, you want to use it for irrigation? That's a great idea, right? To use it to feed toilets into somebody's house because gray water literally smells like sewage, right? People don't want it. But what people don't understand is that they're forcing them to put it in. And that force to put it in is $500,000. You know what I mean? And it's like, that's just one example. Like the examples, like, they just don't stop, right? Like, we deal with a lot of developers, and the things that we are told that they have to do, sometimes it's just like, it's mind-boggling, right? And
John, do you think we're too far gone?
Look,
because that letter that he wrote, like the letter that he wrote, right? It's just like it just seems like it's too little, too late,
Look,
right? Now, mind you, you're right. We're not the ones that wrote the letters, but we talk about this all the time. The government overreach, like Costa, you just said, it's everywhere. It's not just in construction. It's in our homes. It's with the taxes. It's everywhere,
I know,
right?
but like Florida, they're
Like
trying
even
to cut.
speeding cameras on the roads everywhere. You can't turn on a corner without getting a ticket, right, for going 35 and a 30. Like it's running rampant.
I know,
right?
but
So are we at a point now that it's just like it's just too far gone that it can't be corrected?
look, I don't think it's too far gone. I don't think, truthfully, I don't think anything could be too far gone, but you have to start going in the right direction. If we keep going down this road, yeah, we're just going to self-destruct. Right. And
Sorry, let me ask you that. Sorry, I was going to ask you quickly another follow-up question to that because I want to hear your take on both your takes on this. Do you think a big reason for this, why we haven't banded together 10 years ago to sound the alarms, are we selfish people? Have we become like a selfish city and a selfish province just because of the way, everything is structured, like just the cost of living? We're just, everybody's scrambling, everybody's grinding and hustling. Nobody says hello to each other anymore, right? Do you think that that's part of it, that we just kind of have our blinders on, and that's why we're just so disconnected from each other that no one's banding together to ring the alarms, and we're just kind of like scrounging and just to try to make do with what we have for ourselves rather than seeing the big picture? Sorry to cut you off, John.
I don't necessarily think it's a good perspective. Personally, I don't think it's necessarily being selfish. I think in every case, people in general, you have to be slapped in the face in order to like feel the impact of something. Like you can hear news of like, oh, recession and this is happening, but like unless you actually feel it, like in your pocketbook, physically, like get slapped in the face, like you're not going to react, or at least I feel like most people won't react.
That's selfish. But that's getting back to what Charlie's saying. That is selfishness, right? Because look, sorry to cut you off, Costa. Look, I hate to always bring this up, but it's like, get back to COVID, right? Get back to COVID. I remember during COVID, right, speaking to multiple people, it's like, this is not right what they're doing. And it's like, well, they're doing it. It's like, we're firing nurses. Hold on, we have a shortage in the hospital, so we're going to fire nurses because they didn't want to take a shot, right? It's like, what kind of fucking common sense is that? Like, if they're overrun, you need more nurses. You're not going to fight the people that are there to help you, right? But then, the general, like a lot of the people were like, well, it's because of this, it's because of that, it's because of this. But then what's funny is, a month later, 2 months later, 6 months later, 8 months later, a year later, the second that their industry was hit, now they're singing that same tune from the conversation that I had with them before. Right. So what I always feel, like Charlie, to get back to your question, you're 100% right. Everybody's fucking selfish. Right. And like, it's not necessarily a bad thing because, yes, you have to look out for yourself. But I think this is where, a lot of people talk about democracy. And it's like, well, we need to stick together as a nation. Right. Whether it's affecting me or not, if something's not right, we should band together and be like, no, that's absolutely not. Do not do that. Right? And nobody does that. The only time that happens is, like you said, Costa, when it starts to, when you get slapped in the face and it starts to affect your bottom dollar, right? It's like, I can't remember the exact saying. I know I'm going to butcher it, but it's like, you want to see a man get angry, right? Fuck with his money. Right. And it's true. Like even people in the construction industry, I remember, guys working on high rise during COVID, it was like, everybody was like, they were fine, right? Because their site was going. Right. But the second their site got hit with a case and, the site was shut down for 14 days. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, this is bullshit. This is this is that. And it's like, yeah, but we were just talking about this 3 months ago when they were telling this guy who just invested, $500,000 to open a restaurant. They shut down his restaurant. To you, that was fine. But to me, even though I'm not in the restaurant business, that's fucking wrong. You know what I mean? Nobody should tell you, you have to close down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I still don't I still don't think it's selfish. Like, I think it's more naivete than selfish. Like, for example, you always think like, oh, that will never happen to me, or you eat McDonald's every day, knowing that it's bad for you, until you get a heart attack and you realize like, oh shit, like, is that selfish that he's eating McDonald's every day? It's more like naive thinking like it's
I don't
not going to
think,
happen to you.
yeah. So I think you get the point, right? Like, yeah, you're right. Like, selfish might not be the right word, but when I think back to COVID, because Johnny, you just brought it up, there's something that really was an eye opener for me. I remember when they banned the people from like sitting inside restaurants and eating, right? And there was one guy, I don't know if you guys remember this. It was like down in Etobicoke, I want to say, and he's just like all over Instagram. I'm open. Come on down. I don't give a shit. Everybody's
Adamson's
welcome to
barbecue.
come. Yeah, that guy, right? So I actually drove down there, John. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah.
right? So so because you know what I just said, this guy runs a business, and I'm like, I just thought, I can relate to this guy as a business owner. He's put everything on the line, and he's about to lose it all, right? For just nonsense, because you can't sit down and eat, because this crazy silly rule that they made. So I went down there, I had a meal, the place was packed, there's cops everywhere, and then they just, they threw the book at this guy. But I remember thinking in my head and believing that everybody was going to unite at this point. Like, I thought it was just such a pivotal moment, and even with the truckers, right? Now I'm like, everybody's going to band around. As Canadians, we're going to bond together, and we're going to like stand up for what's right and just say like, no, let these people run their businesses. Let these people have their restaurants, their nail salons, even if they're not deemed essential, right? And what I saw was the complete opposite. And ever since then, if anything, it's made me feel closer to the people that really matter in my life, like my business partners, my friends. And that's who I latched onto, and that's who I decided to be loyal to and protect. And now the reason I brought that question to you guys, is because I'm guilty of it. I couldn't care less about anybody else, the way they run their business. I'm so focused on my business and my survival and your guys' survival that I've kind of like lost track of caring for others. And I feel it was just like since that moment where I saw no one cares. They'll leave you in a trench and walk all over you if it means saving themselves, right? And to me, I never lived my life that way, but I realized at that moment that that's how we are living in this city, right? And just, Costa, being in Europe recently, that was also another big eye-opener as to how you should be living your life. The value of camaraderie, the value of, eating good food and just being courteous to people and taking the time out of your day to have a conversation and sit down and have a coffee with somebody. We have gotten so far away from that now. Like and that's why I was asking, like, is it beyond repair? John, you know me, I'm the doom and gloom guy, and I love how you're like, no, I don't think anything's ever too far gone, but just the way that I see just people walking around the city, it's just heartbreaking. Like people will literally trample all over you to make a dollar.
Well, the problem,
right? And with that being said, and why selfish might not have been the right word to use, is because you have to survive, right? So if you're a person like us, it's like, I want to unite, right? Like this guy, he wrote the letter, like, I want to unite with other companies and fight back and fight against this government overreach, right? But I just feel like we're no longer connected together, and nobody is willing to even do that. Nobody cares to do that. They're just protecting their own assets.
Let me ask you a sub question to this, okay? Both of you guys. Do you guys think that the reason why we're so disconnected is because of all the overreach that they've done, all these stupid taxes and development charges and how they keep increasing it? They're making more money than even the builder is, and the list can go on and on. Do you think that because of a lot of other things, high taxes and everything like that, people really, like a lot of people are struggling, which means that they don't even have the time to band together because they make $1 and 70 cents is wiped from them. You know what I mean? So, which means that they have to keep working. They're like so embedded in the grind that you literally can't knock them off because they don't even have time, right? Truthfully, they don't have time. Like I even remember, I remember when you went down there to the barbecue, right? To Adamson's barbecue. And I wanted to go so bad. But the reality was, because of all the, you know, fucking changes the government was making, I had to stay in the office. And I remember it was like, well, we're pivoting right now. Like, I'd love to go, but I have to stay here and do this, right? Where the reality was, like, can you imagine, like, property taxes were, 1-2%, like tax on any goods was, 5%. You know what I mean? Like think about how much more money the average individual will have in their pocket. And if there was a government overreach, like, do you think that people would band together more, right? Because now it's like, wait a minute, no, that's not right. And people would have more free time, right? Like looking in Europe, right? Like, you see it. You walk down the street, people are at the cafes, everybody's enjoying themselves. Obviously, they don't, I don't seem to think that they work as crazy as we do here. But do you think that, like, my question to you guys is, do you think that because of all the other high tax and everything like that, that has to do with a lot of people not speaking out because they have no time?
Yeah, look, I think it has to do with a lot of things. I think, just naturally with the cost of living being what it is in Toronto, people are going to be working multiple jobs. People are going to be grinding. You're going to be in that rat race, right? And obviously this conversation is straying from construction a bit, but I just think that it's our core values are disappearing. I just think that we've forgotten to be humans first, and that's the key thing here. I think that we're just so engulfed, like just surrounded by this crazy grind, that we forgot who we are, essentially. And then, we talk about Europe. Europe has their own problems, right? Like, if anything, like, they don't have any work whatsoever, right? So it's like, and me and you, John, we joke around. It's like the guy that at the cafe in Europe he's talking for 4 hours with his friend that there's no work, right? Or Cost, I think you were mentioning that, right? So it's like you could be spending that 4 hours going out there and finding work, but yeah, you choose to sip espresso after espresso, complaining that you can't find work. So, like, look, no place is perfect, but I think that it's a combination of things. You're right. Like, because we're scrambling, because, and not only that, we've put such a huge emphasis on kids' sports and, extracurricular activities. It's like, the average parent, they come home from their 9-to-5 job or whatever job they have. They're kind of like, eating a quick meal, grabbing their kid. One parent goes this way, the other parent goes that way. They're going to sports, they're coming back, bedtime, bed story, they go to sleep, and there is no time for anything. Right? So I think it's a culmination of many things. Struggle, just rushing around, that kind of create this disconnection between us, and then doesn't allow us to band together anymore, or even care to.
I have a bit of a different take. I don't know how deep we want to go on this, or we should move on, but like the whole idea of like community and banding together, which I think is vital in like functioning societies and, good ways to live and raise a family and all that. But I'm thinking a bit deeper. Like, if you look thousands of years into human history, I in a way, I think survival of the fittest is a principle in like human evolution, right? And again, back to the point, until you get smacked in the face with something, in this case, impacts to your pocketbook and the ability to support your family and make a living, I think your natural reaction as a human is to survive. And how I see that playing out specifically with Canada is people are deciding to survive by leaving the country, because I think a lot of people are just starting to simply lose hope and not, trying to even band together and fix it. They're just, leaving. And I think that's a reality. You can see it. You can see the money outflows of Canada. And like, we all speak to people every day, very successful entrepreneurs, businesses, almost daily, talking about leaving the country. So I don't know, maybe that's just humans, like that's just in us innately, survival of the fittest. And sometimes that doesn't necessarily mean like a physical thing. It could mean just like relocating to somewhere that's more favorable to you.
Yeah, and I guess those are the people that think that it's too far gone, right? And people get tired of fighting a corrupt system. It almost it feels like a waste of your energy.
Yeah, like my question to that last point, like to that, from 2010 to now, a 993% increase on development charges. It's like, somebody justify this.
So I mean, you have a housing affordability, and yet 25% of that cost to buy a house is development charges. Like, what the hell does that even entail?
That's what I mean. Like somebody explain this, right? And what it seems like, with all due respect, and maybe I am straying off a lot, but what it seems like is the mob from, back in the 50s and 60s, right? Oh, you want to put this here? This is my cut. You know what I mean? You don't give me that cut, you're not getting it, right? And that's where to me, like I said, I'll stand firm on my position no matter what it is. A lot of people always look to the government. What we need is less government intervention, right? Let the people, let the true thinkers, the true entrepreneurs, right? Let the markets speak for themselves. You know what I mean? You don't need to tax people when they found an avenue to make money, and now your average person who has saved up money can then buy a piece of property or a piece of land or a house, renovate it, sell it, buy a condo, flip it, right? Like this is like, construction is the heartbeat of our country, right? Why are you penalizing people when they're making the economy go round and round, and you're just putting a bunch of red tape in front of it? It makes no fucking sense.
But it's not
Maybe
just
we
that,
can
but
get someone like to justify this, and some politician or someone to explain developmental charges. Maybe we're missing something, but hey,
Actually, we have a guest speaker that's going to come on in an episode very soon. Who he's in the development. I don't want to give it away, but I think
maybe you
this would
can
be a
shed
good,
some light.
yeah, it'd be a good topic on how in 15 years has it gone up 1,000%, right? Because I can tell you right now, from when me and Charlie opened our doors, from what we were charging, like the only thing we can personally control in our prices is basically labor, right? So what we were charging from when we opened our doors almost 16 years ago to now, right? Like, I think our labor is up, 11%. And the only reason it's up 11% is because, the cost of living, right? So how does, companies, what they have full control over, how do they only go up, let's just say, 10, 20, 25%, but then municipality costs and building costs go up 1,000%. It makes no fucking sense. But then the contractor, the builder who's sitting there trying to build this house for somebody is trying to, when the homeowner or whoever it is that owns the land is looking at the contractor like, why is it so expensive? You know what I mean? It's like, well, like you just showed, 25% of this, go speak to your politicians. You know what I mean?
Yeah. All right, boys. Good discussion today. I think let's wrap it there. For anyone listening, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, do so wherever you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, on YouTube as well. And if you're a contractor looking to streamline your operations and simplify your day-to-day tasks, check out jobtable.com, sign up for a 14-day free trial, and get started. Boys, pleasure as always.
Pleasure.
Until next week.
Pleasure. Take care,
Ciao,
guys.
guys.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.